What if I told you the very tool you're using to make your AI coding agent smarter is, well, actually lobotomizing it? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack why a super common AI coding practice might literally be sabotaging your entire development workflow. If you use AI agents to write code, I bet you've been tempted to create this massive master rulebook for your whole repository. But we're going to look at why that is a huge mistake and how flipping the script to a totally different approach can drastically improve your code quality. Okay, let's dive right into this really provocative finding from a recent academic paper. These researchers put repository-level context files to the test. They basically evaluated what happens when you feed an AI coding agent a massive global context file, like an agents.md document. And their conclusion? It was brutally blunt. They found that unnecessary requirements actually make the AI's job harder, not easier. Human-written context files might try to describe minimal requirements, but they just end up getting in the way of actual problem solving. It's crazy, right? Your absolute best intentions are actually breaking your workflows. So this leads us to a massive question for anyone using an AI coding assistant. Should you ever run the initialization command to generate a global rules file? You know, the ones, commands like /init. They promise to magically set up your environment by creating this centralized markdown file that explains your entire architecture to the AI. But as you'll see in just a minute, you should probably never, ever run this command. Here is exactly how we're going to break down this trap. We've got 5 sections today. First, the global file trap. Second, the context window tax. Third, why documentation rots. Fourth, just-in-time exploration. And finally, upgrading to AI skills. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the global file trap, the illusion of a helpful rulebook. Let's start with the trap itself, which usually kicks off with a seemingly helpful, completely innocent little command. You want your AI to understand how your project works, so you try to teach it everything at once. Running the init command generates a global markdown file, something like claude.md or agents.md, that promises to teach the AI your specific codebase architecture. But honestly, it acts as a total Trojan horse. You might stuff it with instructions about your React router setup, your highly specific database service names, or your custom error handling. And it feels like you're giving the AI this amazing, helpful map. But in reality, you're strapping a 50-pound backpack onto the agent before it even takes a single step. Think about it. It's like asking a junior developer to fix a tiny typo on your homepage, but forcing them to sit through a 3-hour lecture on your entire backend architecture first. It's just exhausting and entirely counterproductive. Which brings us to Section 2, the context window tax, paying the price on every request. Because, as it turns out, there is a massive hidden cost to this global file. Every time you ask the AI to do something, it has to read that entire global rulebook. And this perfectly illustrates the problem. Your global file absolutely bloats the fixed system prompt. Notice how that system prompt slice grows, continually squeezing out the vital space that you actually need for things like exploration, implementation, and testing. It's hardwired in and it's loaded on every single request. So if your global file is massive, you're leaving way less of your context window available for the agent to actually, read new files, write the code, or process your unit test results. So here's the crucial point. There is a hard limit here. LLMs realistically only have a budget of about 300 to 400 instructions before they start suffering from what's called lost-in-the-middle retrieval problems. These models just do way better with less, highly focused information. If you completely overwhelm the context window, the AI gets hit with the classic needle in a haystack problem. It'll prioritize the very beginning of its context and the very end and completely forget all those bloated instructions you left sitting right there in the middle. When you stuff a global file full of React patterns or database service names that just aren't relevant to a specific task, you instantly bankrupt that precious instruction budget. Imagine you're asking the AI to write a super simple database script, but it's forced to read 20 different rules about your front-end CSS framework first. You're literally burning tokens, spending real money, and hamstringing the agent's focus before the actual coding even begins. Let's move on to Section 3, why documentation rots, the fragility of static files. Because not only is that global file expensive to load, its contents have an incredibly short shelf life. The very moment you rename a service or change an implementation, your static global file goes completely out of date. And what happens? It starts feeding the AI conflicting, hallucination-inducing information. Global files rot faster than a pear on a hot summer day. You've got hard-coded architectural rules, API constraints, and file paths that inevitably change. I mean, if you restructure a folder, your agents.md file is suddenly pointing the AI to directories that literally don't exist anymore. The AI reads this outdated rulebook, gets super confused by the actual reality of the live codebase, and just generates absolute garbage code. So if static global files are the problem, what's the fix? That brings us to Section 4, Just-in-Time Exploration, Trusting the Live Codebase. This is where we shift away from trusting a static document to trusting the code itself. Instead of a static document, look at how the file system itself becomes the ultimate source of truth, entirely skipping the need for rotting rulebooks. We call this just-in-time, or JIT, exploration. Basically, you use an exploration phase. First, a subagent zips through your repository. It reads only the exact files it needs for the specific task at hand. Then it reports a highly focused, super concise summary back to the main agent. It's learning the architecture dynamically, based purely on what exists right now in the live environment. When we compare the two head-to-head, it becomes glaringly obvious why you should just go ahead and delete your agents.md file today and trust the AI's dynamic exploration phase instead. Look, global files cost you tokens on every single request, and they actively mislead your AI when they rot. JIT exploration, on the other hand, costs a tiny fraction of the tokens, it is highly targeted, and it guarantees that the AI is working with 100% accurate, up-to-date information pulled directly from your file system. It's a real game changer. But wait, this leaves us with a pretty big question, which we'll answer in Section 5, Upgrading to AI Skills, Modular Instructions for Targeted Tasks. If we don't have a global file, where exactly do you put the specialized steering instructions you actually do want the AI to follow? Let's say you wanted to use test-driven development or a specific design pattern. Instead of cramming every single rule into a global context, you encode specific processes into tiny, focused skills that are invoked only when relevant. Steering instructions belong in isolated, on-demand AI skills, not global rules. Think of these like highly specialized toolsets that you hand to the agent right before a specific job, rather than forcing the poor agent to carry every single tool in the shed at all times. For example, instead of applying a massive list of global rules to every prompt, you trigger a precise workflow. First, you invoke a targeted skill, something like write a PRD. Then, during the execute phase, the agent focuses its entire context window purely on those specific instructions. Finally, it implements the output efficiently and clears its memory for the next job. It is clean, fast, and incredibly effective. Let's look at some powerful AI skills in action. Skills like Grill Me force the AI to relentlessly interview you to reach a shared understanding, completely bypassing the need for bloated, pre-written documentation. When you use a skill like Grill Me, the AI walks down every single branch of your design tree, resolving unknown dependencies step by step. It actually asks you smart questions about edge cases. Or you can invoke a prototype skill to safely test out UI variations in a throwaway file before committing. Because these skills are totally modular, they don't clog up your system prompt. They ensure your AI is laser-focused and operating at absolute peak intelligence. So, take a look at your own repository today. Seriously, go clear out those old agents.md files, stop paying the massive context window tax, and start treating your coding agents like dynamic problem solvers that explore just in time. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'm going to leave you with this one question to ask yourself right now. Is your global documentation holding your AI back from its full potential?